No doubt, input is one of the most crucial aspects of a game. In today's video, I'm going to be exploring the input class in the Godot game engine. It's basically the one-stop solution for input in Godot. So without wasting any time, let's just start exploring all the methods and functions that are inside this class that can help you create your input in seconds. Action pressed is not an input function basically. It is actually an input creator function. It actually creates input. You can use any action for this. I'm gonna use the default one, UI accept. It stands for space. So, but what basically happens is that it doesn't check for input. It just says that that input has been given. So if you check for a condition for certain input and you have used the action press here, the action press itself will give the input here. So if I run it here, even though I'm not pressing any keys, the computer says that the key is being pressed, even though I'm not pressing, because the action press is actually giving the signal that the key is being pressed. So it's pretty useful all in all. So what action press actually does is that it presses the key and then it keeps on holding on the key. So at some point you actually want to release the key. That's why we use the action release function. Here in the code here, I first press the key, then I release it, and then I check for input here. So what I should get is nothing, because first we press the key, then we just release it. So it's not pressing any keys unless I myself press the key. That's the main concept here. And another thing that action release can be used is for release purposes. What I mean is that you don't need to press a key first to release it. So if you used a function like here, just released, it checks if something has been, a key has been released or not. If you use the release thing here, even though you didn't press the key at first, it will still work. Even though I can just go over here and comment it out, and it will just work. No problem there. Now here we have the is action just press here. It basically does is it checks for the action being pressed or not. I've set up a condition here. So what happens is that if you press the action, like you press it for one time and then you have to lift your hand from that, so you cannot activate it again and again by holding the key. You have to press it again and again. It's merely useful for jumping. You don't want to jump if you're holding the key. You want to jump just once. Same works for release. If you press the key, it won't activate, but when you release it, then it will activate. So it's pretty cool. Now the last one here is the is action pressed. So it will just check if the action is being held on to. It's kind of the most used one, but I think it's really nice to have this function. Here we have the get action strength raw. It basically is mostly useful for console purposes, but it's actually kind of useful. What it does is gives value between 0 and 1, and for keyboard it just gives 0 and 1. If the key has been pressed, it's 1, and if it's not, then 0. Basically, if you set it for maybe the controller stick, so it's gonna return value based on how far the stick is from the starting point and things like that. A note here is that the get action strength function is actually the function that does the same purpose and actually recommended to use instead of get action strength. So that's thing to keep in mind. A cool one here is the is anything pressed. It's a really nice function. It just checks for if anything is pressed, literally anything, key, mouse, keyboard, and anything you like, and just like that it just gives output. So it's pretty cool. You can check if anything is pressed, then you continue the action you were doing and stuff. The key label function actually doesn't take an input action. Instead, you give it a key. It just checks if that specific key is being pressed. It's the old school way of doing stuff. Basically, I recommend using actions. It's the way better version, but in case you want to use it for some reason, you can use it like that. So it just works like a charm. The key pressed is the same thing. I don't know why they are like two things. And another one we have here is mouse pressed. Basically it checks for if any kind of mouse key is being pressed. Like I'm just gonna select the there's a bit of a problem here, so I'm just gonna check if the left key is being pressed or not. So, and then I'm just gonna there's a bit of a problem here. Print. Yeah, I'm just gonna print here. Left press. Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, I'll just press the key and gets the output. It's just thing. Oh, I just remember there's another one for checking keyboard keys. It's the physical key pressed. Maybe it's for like checking if it's pressed physically, not by like the action press function or something like that. So it's pretty cool. So now we are out to the big boys, is the get vector. It's a little bit of complicated one. So basically it does is that returns a vector based on your input actions. So for example, you assigned it 4 actions. Like one action you assigned to -1. So if that action is being pressed, it's going to return -1 x, and you can just like assign 4 values to it, like 1 for -x, 1 for positive x, 1 for positive y, and 1 for negative y. So it works like that, and if that action has been pressed, it just returns vector. You can see in the output here, yes, it returns like 1 0 1. So if you are pressing 2 keys together, it's going to return something in between. One thing you can do is normalize the vector. It's going to like do some cool mathematics, and it's going to keep your vector in the same condition. Mainly used for velocity and stuff. It's just used to kill diagonal movement. So sometime in diagonal movement, the diagonal movement is actually a bit longer, so you kill it by normalizing the vector here. That's a really nice thing. One thing that works is that it's really useful, and you can just create movement code like 2 lines, like just 2 lines, and a player controller is ready. Get axis is just like using the get strength, but you don't have to check for each action. Like it checks for 2 actions at once, for -x or -y and things like. So it just checks for one axis, for positive x and negative x and things like that. There are a bunch of these guys, but I think these are all the important ones, and I don't think the other ones are kind of worth mentioning. Some of them are actually worth mentioning, all the sensors here. The computer doesn't have actually any sensors. If you don't have a insanely high-tech computer, not like me, because I don't have one. But mobile phones do have some sensors, mainly accelerometer, something like that, the gravity sensor, and the magnetic sensors, and some other ones too. So you can use those sensors to like control, like I've played a game where you actually rotate the phone here, so the ball moves in that direction. That's that's done using the gravity meter and stuff. It's pretty cool. There are some functions here for that too. Another cool thing is that some controllers, like those joypads for like PS5 and Xbox, have those vibration and things like that. Maybe like you start a car and it starts vibrating, like the car is like vibrating. That's the vibration of the controller. You can do this using this get like setting the vibration using these kind of functions. There are a bunch of these kind of functions. I definitely recommend checking out the Godot docs. They have much more explanation, and I think that's it for today's video. And if you want to support me, you can support me on Patreon. Please do. And till then, goodbye.